Trigger warning. We're going to be getting into a lot of nitty-gritty topics today. Little taboo, little this, little that. Beautiful blasphemy here. Let's get into it.
Why does God hate homosexual people? Well, he doesn't, actually.
Well, good. Because I was kind of worried there for a second.
And it's a common misconception this is the case. Does he disagree with it? Yes.
Disagree. That's an adjective, but not the one I'd use.
And I'm going to read Leviticus 18:22. Do not lie with a man as one lies with a woman, that is detestable. Or Leviticus 20:13. If a man lies with a man as one lies with a woman, both of them have done what is detestable. They must be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads.
Unfortunately, that sounds pretty straightforward and clear-cut. I don't know where we're going with this, but let's see.
Now, homosexuality is seen as a sin. I'm not going to lie to you. But there are many sins in this world, and we are all sinful beings, and we all fall short of the glory of God.
I really hate how this religion has convinced so many people that they are broken and filled with sin, and there's nothing they can do about it, because that's how they were made. And all they have to do is work their entire life to try to get over obstacles that were put in place by the person that's supposed to love them.
So God does not hate people that are gay. In fact, God loves them in exactly the same way that he loves anyone else.
Well, obviously he doesn't hate them, you silly goose. He just demands they be put to death.
Because we all fall short. What is important is that we go to God and we let God deal with those situations.
I don't know if you want to let God deal with that situation. He was pretty explicitly clear of his instructions. They are to be put to death.
Everyone has a sin that they struggle with, and that might be the one that they struggle with. So there's no judgment, there's no hate.
Yeah, it's not judgmental, and it's not hate. I mean, what's wrong with y'all? Listen, both of them have done what is detestable. There's no judgment there. They are to be put to death. Guys, it's love.
In fact, I show love to anybody in the same way. And so if that's a struggle you have, show love. Don't look at them differently because that's their lifestyle.
Homosexuality and heterosexuality are not a lifestyle.
Acknowledge that in the Bible it's wrong and show them love as you would anyone else.
So, unfortunately, this is something that has been drilled into my head from a very young age. And here in the Bible Belt, it is a very common outlook on others, and it's a very common phrase to use, well, I don't agree with the lifestyle. Lifestyle and sexuality, whenever we're talking about what you're naturally attracted to, do not go hand in hand. Period. Lifestyle is a decision you make, an active choice, right? Who you are attracted to is just wired in you. Because if it weren't, you could just choose to be attracted to someone else of the same or opposite sex. And if you can't do that, then you have to admit it's not a choice. It's not a lifestyle. It's just your nature. So let's go over what's a lifestyle. Well, first one off the top of my head would be veganism. That's a lifestyle, right? You're making an active decision, a choice, to have a plant-based diet instead of a diet that incorporates meat or dairy products. That's a choice that you're making actively. Every day you make that choice. That's a lifestyle. What's another lifestyle? How about swinging, right? Sharing partners, getting intimate with other couples. That's a choice you're making. It's a lifestyle, right? It's not for some people. It's for some people. It's just different strokes for different folks. Or an active lifestyle, where you choose to be active, go out and about, whether it's working out, hiking, running, whatever, right? You're making the conscious effort. You're making a choice to do certain things. That's a lifestyle, right? Because you're choosing it. You're actively choosing it. I mean, you can choose your internet provider. You can choose where you further your education. You can choose what shirt you're going to wear. But what you're not going to choose is what sex you are attracted to. Point blank simple. We all know that homosexuality has been taboo for a lot of groups of people for a lot of time. Doesn't matter the culture or the society or which continent you reside on. It's been taboo for a lot of people. And it actually wasn't until the 1700s that people started realizing there are some animals, wild animals out in nature, that have same-sex sexual behavioral practices. And it reminds me of George Murray Levick, who was a zoologist and a photographer. And in 1911, he was the first researcher to study the largest Adelie, I'm probably butchering that, penguin colony. He recorded daily the activities the animals engaged in great detail. One of the topics he recorded was their sexual behaviors, including the same sex between male birds. At that time, he didn't publish his findings in any published papers because he was concerned about the graphic content. But he did print 100 copies of Sexual Habits and the Adelie Penguin for private circulation. And what's really cool, we've now discovered over 1,500 different species that behave in same-sex activity. And it goes from insects to reptiles to mammals. Just to name a few, we've got spiders, nematodes, vertebrates such as fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. And same-sex behaviors is very prevalent in non-human primates, where it's been observed in at least 51 species, from lemurs to apes. And this brings me back to the things that I've heard in church, in random conversation with people. Hearing this growing up is love the sinner, not the sin. Well, when you talk about something that is observed to happen naturally across different species, completely natural, it's not a sin to them, right? That's just nature doing its thing. But it's not nature doing its thing whenever it's for us. Last I checked, we were mammals. And calling homosexuality a sin is to say that it's wrong or it's immoral. How? No one's asking you to partake in something you don't want to be a part of. Like, if you're not into same sex, cool. Now some people might say, well, come on, beautiful blasphemy. I mean, we don't listen to the Old Testament anymore because we have the New Testament. And Jesus came to change all that. Right. But there's still things in the Old Testament that you hold true amongst a whole bunch of stuff that you don't. For example, how about Leviticus chapter 20 verse 9, where it says, anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death? Or how about Leviticus chapter 19 verse 27, do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. And don't even think about sacrificing your kids to a false idol. You can only sacrifice your kids to God. And no, that is not hyperbolic. Let me show you. Leviticus chapter 20 verses 2 and 3, it says, say to the Israelites, any Israelite or any foreigner residing in Israel who sacrifices any of his children to Moloch is to be put to death. The members of the community are to stone him. I myself will set my face against him, and I will cut him off from his people. For by sacrificing his children to Moloch, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name. Wait a minute. I remember a couple stories about sacrificing your kids. What was that? It was Abraham. That was one of them. Genesis chapter 22, starting in verse 2 all the way to verse 12, where then God said, take your son, your only son, who you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. So not only is he commanding for child sacrifice here, he's also going to show you how to do it. Even though later on an angel came down and went, JK, you're good. You passed the test. There were others that weren't so fortunate. Or how about in Judges chapter 11 verses 30 through 38, where Jephthah basically asks God, he's like, hey yo bro, be on my side while I slaughter all these people, alright? And if you do that, if you let me win, I'll sacrifice anyone you want. Just send them my way, I got you. God's like, bet. I wouldn't lie to you. Or we could talk about Leviticus chapter 23, verse 30 through 32, where God's basically saying, don't work on the Sabbath, or, let's see, what were the exact words? I will destroy from among their people anyone who does any work on that day. And of course, it's confirmed a book later in Numbers chapter 15, verse 32 through 36, where basically God kills a dude for picking up sticks on his holy day. But what y'all are missing, what you're not keeping in mind, is that God is love. He is moral.
Abraham! Do not lay a hand on the boy! Put the knife down. Put it down.
But I have to do what God told me to do.
No, you don't. Move away from the child. Move away. That's it. Slowly.
God
slowly.
told me that I have to kill him.
Yes, I...
And again, people are going to say, well, look, that was the Old Testament, and Jesus came, and he told us the way we should live, and how we get saved, and all that good, wonderful, flowery stuff. Okay, cool. Jesus is God, right? Right? Jesus is God. He's the Son of the Father, but he's also the Father and the Son. But he Father in heaven, how can you forsake me? But he is his Father, and then he dies for himself, to himself, for a loophole as a scapegoat. None of this makes sense, but we have to remember, this was the same God from the Old Testament that we're talking about in the New Testament. He's just in a physical body, right? So if you have an entity that can represent themselves in one way as terrible, and then another way good, what does that make this entity? Both good and evil, correct? That would be the same thing as if, let's give a hyperbolic example, Hitler, right? He is killing the Jewish people, exterminating them, enslaving them on the weekdays, but then on the weekend, he goes and he entertains a kid's birthday party, dresses up as a clown, and makes balloon animals and gives out little goodie bags, and all the kids are having a great time, and the parents come up and they say, oh, wow, that was so entertaining. Wow, you're so good at that. Okay, it's the same person. Does a bad thing, does a good thing. You cannot hand wave away the bad. And, in my opinion,
God did.
Way worse whenever we're talking about the floods. When we're talking about the infanticide.
Jesus Christ.
When we're talking about the genocide. When we're talking about how to slave 101.
Just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
What?
Wait a minute.
This is a done deal. So there was a saying I heard a couple years ago that really stuck with me. And it was, you shouldn't take advice from someone that you would not take criticism from. And you can apply that copy and paste to this situation right here. Would you take advice from a omnipotent, inept, narcissistic, authoritative, infanticidal, genocidal, slave-endorsing deity, right? That's going to make you sinful from the get-go, tell you how wrong you are, how messed up you are, command that you be well, while also worshiping and praising the one who made you the way you are? Or would you just disregard it altogether? I gotta tell you, the latter feels pretty good. I can say with full confidence, I love you more than the Sky Daddy could ever, right? Because I'll accept you for who you are. I don't believe in the concept of sin, because it's a religious, dogmatic instrument to really get under the skin of people, to make them feel guilty for things they don't necessarily have to feel guilty for. And remember, we should not take advice from someone that we wouldn't take criticism
From.
But blasphemy, what about free will? There's no such thing as free will in your ideology. Look, he's omnipotent, omniscious, all-knowing, all-powerful. So he is able to set up a system that is absent of sin, right? He's able to set up a system where if his desire is to be praised constantly, he could do that. He sets up a system where if he's not going to be on earth and he's just going to let the devil, who he already knew was going to reject him and be evil, use it as a playground, that would be the same as like having your kids go to a daycare where you know the workers are murderous, psychopathic lunatics. I can't even get into all of the terrible things that you could imagine, but putting that person in charge and then wondering why things are going wrong. It doesn't make sense.